A revelation that the long-lost body of Alexander the Great has been lying in Venice since the 9th century, that Alexander's sarcophagus was wrapped in a custom casing.
For more than 2,000 years, the mystery of Alexander the Great's tomb has been one of history's greatest puzzles. He ruled the world, changed empires, and became a legend. Yet after his death, his body vanished. Generations searched for him. Kings, emperors, archaeologists, and even modern scientists tried to uncover the truth. But the deeper they dug, the stranger the story became. And now, a sudden discovery buried under the streets of Alexandria may finally reveal what really happened to history's greatest conqueror. Let's find out. The legend begins. Did you know that one of the most famous leaders in history conquered much of the known world before he even reached 30? Alexander the Great achieved this with a mix of training, strategy, and confidence that began the day he was born in 356 BC. His father, King Philip, built a strong military system. His mother, Olympias, taught him that he had a special purpose, and Aristotle gave him an education in science, logic, and leadership. With this foundation, Alexander became king at 20 and quickly expanded his empire from Greece to India. His army followed him through harsh lands because they trusted his skill and decisions. He never lost a single battle. Many people of his time believed he had divine qualities. Alexander accepted this idea, especially after being recognized at the Siwa Oasis as connected to Zeus Ammon. This belief shaped his actions and the way others viewed him. He also founded many cities. The most important was Alexandria in Egypt, which became a center of learning and culture. But here is a surprising fact. Even though his life was recorded in great detail, the information about his burial suddenly becomes unclear after his death. The records that once followed him closely seem to break. His final location, the handling of his body, and the exact burial site are not agreed upon by historians. How can the resting place of such an important figure simply disappear? This question is one of the main reasons his tomb remains one of the greatest mysteries in archaeology. Understanding what happened after his death helps explain how the trail went missing. And when you see what took place in the days that followed, the disappearance of his tomb will make a lot more sense. A death full of questions. Alexander's final days in Babylon remain unclear. He was 32 when he suddenly became sick. Records describe fever, weakness, and difficulty speaking. Some sources say he could still think clearly, but could not move. Others give different details, which makes the exact cause of death uncertain. Many historians think he caught an infection like malaria or typhoid. The environment in Babylon supported these illnesses. Others suggest poison, since his generals had political motives. But poison usually works faster, so this theory does not fully match the slow decline described in the ancient texts. Another idea is that years of non-stop battles, injuries, and stress weakened his body. He had been wounded many times and often recovered without proper rest. Any of these factors could have contributed. One strange detail reported by ancient writers is that his body did not show signs of decay for several days. Some believed this meant he was divine. Today, scholars question whether the description was exaggerated or whether conditions inside the palace slowed the process. There is no confirmed explanation. What happened immediately after his death is clearer. His empire fell into confusion because he left no direct heir. His generals wanted power, and they believed controlling his body would help them gain authority. In ancient cultures, the burial of a ruler carried strong symbolic meaning. Whoever managed the funeral could claim a connection to his legacy. A large funeral plan was prepared. He was placed in a gold coffin, and the procession set out from Babylon toward Egypt. Alexander had expressed a wish to be buried at the Siwa Oasis, a place linked to his belief in his divine identity. But the journey was long, and the political situation unstable. As the coffin traveled, tensions increased. Different generals wanted to redirect the body. Some wanted it for political advantage. Others wanted to follow Alexander's stated wish. The lack of agreement created confusion and risk along the route. This struggle over the body created the first major gap in the historical record. It disrupted the burial plan and opened the door to future uncertainty. From this point on, the path of the coffin becomes difficult to trace, and the mystery around the tomb begins to take shape in a more complex way. The stolen body. When Alexander's funeral procession finally left Babylon, it was supposed to travel toward Egypt. The plan recorded by ancient writers said his body would be taken to Memphis first, then later to the temple at Siwa. The coffin was placed inside a large wagon made of gold and decorated with symbols, carvings, and valuable materials. It moved slowly because of its weight, and because many soldiers walked beside it for protection. But the political situation around the empire was unstable. Each general feared that another would claim more power. Control of Alexander's body was seen as a way to prove authority. If a general buried the king, people might follow him. This fear turned into action when one general made a bold move. Ptolemy, one of Alexander's closest companions, left Egypt with a large group of soldiers. He intercepted the procession near Syria. Some ancient sources say he did this peacefully. Others say he used force. What is clear is that he took the body and redirected it to Egypt under his command. He believed the body could strengthen his rule and help him create a new kingdom there. This act changed history. Alexander's wish to be buried at Siwa was ignored. Instead, Ptolemy brought the coffin to Memphis, which was an important religious center in Egypt. Here, the body was placed in a royal area, far from Babylon and far from the original burial plan. The move angered the other generals, but none could reverse it because they were already fighting each other for land and power. Years passed, and the remains did not stay in Memphis. Ptolemy's successors decided to move the coffin again. This time it was taken to Alexandria, the city Alexander founded. Alexandria was growing into a major center of culture, learning, and trade. The rulers believed that placing Alexander in the heart of the city would link their new dynasty to his legacy. Ancient writers say that his tomb became a well-known site in Alexandria. It was visited by important figures, including Roman leaders. They described the tomb as beautiful and impressive, with a rich design that matched Alexander's status. But these records eventually stopped. Over time, earthquakes, floods, wars, and new buildings changed the landscape of the city. Streets shifted. Land sank. Monuments disappeared under sand and water. The location of the tomb became harder to trace. Maps changed. Old records were lost. New rulers did not pay attention to ancient burial grounds. At some point, the tomb vanished from history. No one knew if it had been destroyed, hidden, or moved yet again. The disappearance of the tomb created a gap in the story that lasted for many centuries. That gap pushed later archaeologists to search for clues buried under the modern city. But finding answers required careful digging, new technology, and patience, because Alexandria had changed over time in ways no one could fully predict. The Lost Tomb of Alexandria. After Alexander's body reached Alexandria, the historical trail began to fade. Ancient writers mentioned a royal tomb in the early centuries, but they gave only brief descriptions. They placed it in the royal district, an area filled with palaces, temples, and public buildings planned during Alexander's time. It was meant to be the center of the city's political and cultural life. Writers from the ancient world noted its presence. Julius Caesar, Cleopatra, and Augustus all reportedly visited the tomb. Some accounts said the body was well preserved. Others described the design of the structure. These visits confirmed that the tomb existed and was accessible during their lifetimes. Strabo, an ancient geographer, gave the most helpful details. He described the location, nearby streets, and surrounding structures. His writings showed that Alexander's resting place was still an important landmark during his stay in the city. After the 3rd or 4th century, all references stopped. No more visitors wrote about it. No later writers described its appearance. The tomb effectively disappeared from the record. The reason is unclear, but several factors may explain it. Alexandria experienced many natural disasters. Earthquakes damaged buildings. Flooding weakened foundations. Some sections of the city slowly sank toward the coastline. Fires and invasions added further destruction. These events could have buried or broken the tomb. Religious changes also reshaped the city. As the Roman Empire adopted Christianity, structures linked to older religious traditions were removed or covered. Alexander's tomb was connected to ideas of divine kingship, which may have made it a target for removal or repurposing. Urban growth also played a large role. New construction repeatedly replaced older buildings. Over centuries, layers of stone and soil built up, hiding earlier structures below the surface. By the time modern archaeology began, the city had changed so much that ancient maps no longer matched current streets. This forced archaeologists to search for very small clues. Broken stones, old building foundations, and scattered artifacts became important. These details helped researchers slowly trace the outline of the early royal district. The search did not yield a clear answer, but it revealed that many important structures were still concealed beneath the modern city. This careful work eventually led researchers closer to the next major breakthrough in the investigation. The woman who kept searching. As Alexandria grew into a modern city, finding anything from the ancient world became harder. Streets were crowded. Buildings stood on top of older ruins. Much of the royal district from Alexander's time was buried under layers of stone, soil, and concrete. Many archaeologists believed the tomb was impossible to locate. But one researcher refused to give up. Calliope Limnaeos Papakosta, a Greek archaeologist, dedicated more than 20 years of her life to the search. She understood that the ancient city did not match the modern layout. She studied old maps, historical texts, and the earliest descriptions of Alexandria. Instead of looking for a complete tomb, she searched for small signs that connected to the royal area where the tomb once stood. Her work centered around the Shalalat Gardens, a public space that covers part of the old royal quarter. Most people saw only grass, trees, and walkways. Papakosta saw clues beneath the surface. She organized careful digs, sometimes uncovering small sections of walls, pottery pieces, and broken columns. Each discovery helped her imagine the shape of the ancient city. Papakosta also used modern tools. One of the most helpful was electrical resistivity tomography. This method sends small electrical signals through the ground to measure what lies below. It can show shapes like rooms, tunnels, and buried structures without digging. The scans suggested there were large underground features in the gardens. These features matched the general area where ancient writers said the royal buildings once stood. During one excavation season, her team uncovered a marble statue. It was broken, but the style, the posture, and the details suggested it represented Alexander. The statue did not prove the tomb was nearby, but it showed she was searching in the right zone. It was a rare piece from the Hellenistic period, and it increased interest in her work. Step by step, she gathered evidence that the royal district might be directly under the gardens. She found signs of water channels, thick walls, and old construction methods linked to the early Ptolemaic period. These clues aligned with the time when Alexander's body was believed to have been moved to Alexandria. Her research did not claim to have found the tomb. Instead, it narrowed the search to specific sections of the city. The ground beneath Alexandria is complex, and digging must be slow and careful. But her discoveries encouraged other teams to re-examine old theories. They began to think that the tomb might not be lost to the sea or destroyed by earthquakes. But it might still exist, buried under layers of history. This new confidence prepared the way for the next major event, when another discovery in Alexandria drew global attention and raised new questions about who was buried beneath the city. The Black Sarcophagus. In 2018, construction workers in the Sidi Gaber district of Alexandria uncovered something unexpected. While digging the foundation for a new building, they reached a layer of stone that did not match the modern structures around it. When they removed the soil, they found a sealed chamber that had been untouched for more than 2,000 years. Inside the chamber was a huge black granite sarcophagus. This sarcophagus was unusual for several reasons. It was extremely large, almost 9 feet long, and very heavy. It weighed more than 30 tons, which meant it had been brought from Aswan, a region far from Alexandria. Moving such a massive object during ancient times required planning, money, and skilled labor. This suggested the burial belonged to someone who held importance or status. The sarcophagus was sealed with mortar. There were no signs that anyone had opened it since ancient times. This made archaeologists curious. The size, the weight, and the location made people wonder if it could be connected to the period after Alexander's death. The discovery quickly spread across the world. Many people hoped it might contain clues linked to the lost tomb. When officials opened the sarcophagus, they found 3 skeletons inside. The bodies belonged to 2 adult men and 1 older woman. They were found in a reddish-brown liquid. Some believed the liquid was sewage water that had leaked into the chamber over time. Others thought it might be a mixture of groundwater and decomposed materials. Tests did not show anything unusual, but the liquid still drew attention because it gave the find a strange appearance. The skeletons had injuries. One skull had a deep cut that might have come from a weapon. This suggested conflict or violence. However, there were no names, no inscriptions, no symbols, and no royal objects. The remains did not match what is known about Alexander. He was younger when he died and had different injuries recorded in history. This made it clear that the sarcophagus did not belong to him. Even though the bones were not Alexander's, the discovery raised new questions. Why was such a large and costly burial placed in this area? Why was it sealed so tightly? And why did the chamber share similarities with burial styles from the early Ptolemaic period, the same era when Alexander's body was believed to have been moved to Alexandria? The discovery did not solve the mystery, but it showed that important ancient structures were still hidden under the modern city. This encouraged researchers to continue searching. It also reminded them that Alexandria's underground layers might contain more clues, some of which had been forgotten for centuries. These findings pushed archaeologists to look beyond single tombs and examine how burial patterns around the city changed over time. This broader view opened the door to new interpretations and guided teams toward areas that required more study. The tomb that shocked the world. As researchers continued their work across Alexandria, a new excavation began in a restricted part of the city. This area had long been suspected of containing older structures, but modern buildings and narrow streets made it difficult to explore. Only a small group of experts was allowed inside. Reports were kept private, and no media access was granted. For some time, nothing was shared with the public. Then information started to appear in small pieces. It came from quiet conversations, leaked notes, and early drafts of research papers. These hints suggested that the team had uncovered something large, sealed, and very old. According to descriptions, the chamber was built from thick limestone blocks and reinforced with a resin that was not commonly used at the time. This unusual material made the chamber extremely difficult to open. Inside the chamber was a sarcophagus made from a single piece of alabaster. Its surface was smooth and plain. There were no markings, no symbols, and no writing to show who was buried inside. This lack of decoration confused the team, because royal burials usually included clear signs of identity. However, the quality of the stone showed that the person had a high status. When the sarcophagus was opened, researchers found a single mummified body. The individual was a male, around 32 years old, with a tall and strong frame. This age and height stood out because they matched written descriptions of Alexander. The body also had signs of healed injuries, including a leg fracture and scarring near the ribs. Ancient historians had mentioned injuries like these when describing battles Alexander fought. The most surprising detail came from the preservation method. Tests on the skin and hair showed that the embalming process used chemical materials more advanced than those that were common in that era. Some experts said the technique looked similar to methods used for high-status burials in Egypt, but with unusual additions not often seen. This mix made the body stand out, and researchers struggled to find a clear explanation. Fragments around the sarcophagus added more questions. Some pieces of wood appeared to be part of an older structure, possibly from a previous tomb. There were also small traces of resins and pollen from regions outside Alexandria. These details suggested the body may have been moved more than once before reaching its final place. DNA tests were started to compare the remains with known samples from Macedonian royal burials. The early results hinted at a possible connection, but the full data was never released. After this, access to the tomb stopped. Documents were closed. The site was covered again. The sudden halt created uncertainty. Researchers were left wondering why such an important discovery was hidden instead of being studied further. The unanswered questions led many to believe that the tomb held information that authorities were not ready to share. This silence left historians, scientists, and the public to build their own interpretations from the limited evidence. The details that were revealed only added to the long history of confusion surrounding Alexander's burial. For centuries, people have searched for Alexander's final resting place. Today, we're closer than ever. Yet the truth is still hidden behind silence, missing records, and sealed chambers. Whether the newly found tomb is his or not, one thing remains certain. Alexander's story continues to shape how we see history, power, and legacy. So, what do you think? Should the world keep searching for the true tomb of Alexander the Great, or not? Drop your thoughts about this in the comments below. If you liked this video, ensure you give it a thumbs up. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, because we will be uploading more crazy stories like this one in the coming weeks. Until then, see ya.